Okay, welcome back. Today we're going to do part 2 of section 3.4, or it could be the same day, but this is part 2 for section 3.4 on your notes, okay? All right, so we ended up on number 8, so we're going to pick up with number 9, and we're working on piecewise functions. So this one, you're going to write the function for the piecewise function, but they're not giving you the actual equations like they did before. So we have to kind of come up with these equations, okay? So let's do that first so that we can then write our answer. All right, so I'm going to start with the parabola because that's just a basic parabola because I know it goes through the points 1, 1, and 2, 4. So this parabola over here is just the equation y equals x squared. And then over here we have a line, okay? So I need to know the slope and the y-intercept of this line. So I'm going to write over here the slope of this line. Okay, so we're going to count rise over run. So from this point to this point, we went up 1, 2, 3, 4, and we went over 2. So the slope is 4 over 2, which is just 2. Okay, the y-intercept, if I keep going, okay, up 2 over 1, the y-intercept, this graph would cross the y-axis at 3. So that means the y-intercept is 3. All right, so now I can write the equation of this line, which is y equals 2x plus 3. Okay, so now I have my two equations. So you always want to do that first before you try to write your piecewise. Now this piecewise function just has 2. So we're just going to need space for 2 equations. Start with the one on the left, 2x plus 3, and then the one on the right, which is x squared. And now we have to find our x values where we're going to be using those. All right, so x values, they're right here. So we're going to use only this graph from -3 to -1. And we can use -3, but we cannot use -1. Okay, open circle. Then we're using this graph from -1 to 2. And again, I can't use -1. So from -1 to 2, and you can use 2 because that's closed in. Okay, so there's your piecewise function. Now you need the domain and the range. All right, now I'm going to show you. You can get your domain from the picture, or you can get it from here. Like, let's say they just give you this and say, what's the domain? You do not have to go through graphing if you don't want to. All right, so I'm going to pretend this isn't here, and I'm going to look at this for my domain, because the domain is right here. It's all numbers between -3 and -1, so I would write -3 to -1, right? Including -3, not including 1, and then all the numbers from -1 to 2, not including -1, but including 2. So you can get your domain right from here. Okay, if you look at the picture, obviously you can see you're going from -3 to -1, not including it, and then you're going to do from -1 to 2, okay? But you can get the domain from your function, not from the graph. Now you do need to get the range from the picture, so we most likely would not ask you for the range unless you were graphing. So I can see the range values start at -3 and they go up to 4, okay? All of them are being used. So the range would go from -3 to 4, like that. And again, I don't need to stop at 1 because I'm using 1 right here. So I do use that y value, so I don't have to stop. Just because there's a circle doesn't necessarily mean you have to stop the interval. All right, number 10. Same thing. All right, so we have an absolute value function over here. And remember that regular absolute value starts at 0, 0. So when you go over 1, when you move it left 1, that would be absolute value of x plus 1. Okay. It's hard to write that with all these lines. So absolute value of x plus 1. All right, so that's that line. Now we need this line. So again, we need the slope and the y-intercept. So I'll do that over here, the slope of this line. So just count between your points, down 1, over 1. So the slope is -1. And the y-intercept Just keep counting. Up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1 is right there. So that is the point 1, 2, 3. So y equals 3. Okay? All right. So now you can write this equation, y equals negative x plus 3. All right, so our piecewise function. 2 lines again. So we're going to start with the absolute value of x plus 1, and then we'll end up with negative x plus 3. Okay? All right, so when are we using these? So now we do our x's. So we're going to use this equation from negative infinity, because I got my arrow, all the way till I get to 1, 2. X is 2. So x is greater than or equal to 2, right? Sorry about that. Less than or equal to 2. Okay? So any number that's less than 2, I'm using it in this equation. And I'm going to keep going forever. So arrow. All right, for negative x plus 3, I'm going to start at 2, not use it, and then that goes in a positive arrow, so that's positive infinity. So this represents all the numbers greater than 2, not including it. All right, so the domain would be all real numbers because I'm going from negative infinity on the left to positive infinity on the right, and there are no breaks. I'm using every single x somewhere in that graph. Okay? The range, okay, I've got arrows here, arrows there, so I'm starting at negative infinity. I'm going to go up to positive infinity for the y's. Are there any y's that aren't getting used? Nope, because right there I'm still using that y value here. So all the y's are going to get used, so that also has a range of all real numbers. Okay? All right, last one, same thing. Write the piecewise function and state the domain and the range. All right, so let's write each equation first before we write the function. All right, so here we have a line. I see that the y-intercept is 0. I just got to figure out the slope. Okay, so I know the y-intercept is 0. And the slope, just count up 1 over 1. Up 1 over 1, and since the line's coming down, I know that's a negative 1. Lines that go down have a negative slope. So this line would be y equals negative x. And that's it. You could put plus 0, but negative x. All right, this is just a horizontal line at negative 2. So this is just y equals negative 2. And there's not really circles here, but I'm going to assume that these are closed. They look like they're right on there, right? These are the open ones, so we'll close those other ones in. This is your square root function. That has been shifted 1, 2, 3, 4 to the right. So this is y equals the square root of x minus 4. And we're going to talk about those shifts next unit, so don't worry too much about those because you'll get that in the next time you watch the video. All right, so let's write that left to right. 3 equations this time. So we're going to start with negative x. Then we're going to do negative 2, and then we're going to do the square root of x plus 4. And then we got to figure out when we're using those. Okay? So when are we using negative x? From negative infinity till we get to 0. And we're using 0. So that would be greater than or, I did it again. Less than or equal to, less than or equal to 0. All the numbers to the left of 0. We're only going to use 2, negative 2, between 0 and 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? Not using 0, we can use 4. So between 0 and 4, like that. And then we're using the square root function when we get greater than 4, but not including 4. So greater than 4. All right, so there's our function. And our domain is all real numbers again, because if you look, everything's being used. From negative infinity to infinity, check your breaks. I'm using 0, I'm using 4, so there's no break in the domain. Range, however, is a little tricky, so let's look at that. So the range are the y's you're using. So I know I'm using y equals negative 2, but I'm not using any other negative y value. So I'm just going to put that kind of by itself. Okay. So I'm just using negative 2. Now you could put brackets around it, but Typically, you use braces when it's just one number. You use brackets for an interval. So then I'm going to start my y's back at 0, and then I'm using all the y's after that. So then we're going to go from 0 to infinity. Okay? So that would be the range for that one. All right, so that's the end of the section now. So that was part 2. So now you've got all of your notes done, hopefully, and you can continue to work on your homework on Hawks. As always, let me know if you need any help. Okay, so good luck on this section, and then we'll start back with the next section soon.